My brothers and sisters, if you also want to embrace this truth in your life, then watch the video till the end. When we talk about transforming our lives spiritually and mentally, we often look for something complex, some advanced technique or deep philosophical secret. But Islam teaches us that transformation begins at the very first moment of the day. And that is why Fajr is not just a prayer. It's a mindset, an awakening, a spiritual discipline that shapes the psychology of your entire life. Waking up for Fajr is a profound act of intentionality. You're telling yourself, before anyone else tells you who you are or what you should care about, that your purpose comes from Allah. In a world where most people start their day reacting, checking notifications, messages, news feeds, you begin with clarity, you begin with submission, you begin with silence before your Creator, and that immediately places you in a different psychological state than the rest of the world. Psychologists talk about first moment influence, that the first conscious decision of your day sets the tone for your mental patterns. When you begin your day with discipline, your mind becomes more disciplined. When you begin your day with purpose, your decisions throughout the day reflect that purpose. And when you begin your day with worship, your heart stays tethered to what truly matters. Even if you feel sleepy, even if it's difficult, even if you do not experience spiritual highs, every morning, the very act of getting up builds spiritual muscle, because the transformation doesn't come from emotion. It comes from consistency. That's why Allah rewards these early hours so abundantly. It's a moment where only the sincere show up. You stand before your Lord at a time when the world is quiet, when your mind is uncluttered, and your heart is naturally more receptive. These are the moments when dawah sinks deeper, where reflection becomes easier, and where clarity begins. And there's something subtle here as well. Beginning the day with Fajr weakens the ego. The nafs doesn't like discomfort. It resists discipline. But every time you push through that resistance, you reclaim control over your inner self. You are training your soul to lead your desires, not the other way around. After Fajr, take a few minutes, not long, even 2 or 3 minutes, to set your intention. Ask yourself, who am I becoming today? What kind of heart do I want to carry? What kind of character do I want Allah to see in me by the end of the day? These small moments of clarity, right after prayer, can realign your entire trajectory. They remind you that your life is not a series of random reactions. It's a deliberate journey. If you want spiritual depth, if you want mental calmness, if you want to break the cycles of distraction and anxiety, start with how you begin your morning. Keep it simple, keep it sincere, and keep it consistent. Because the one who wins the morning wins the day, and the one who wins the day ultimately wins their life. One of the greatest misunderstandings we have today is assuming that meaningful Quran engagement requires long hours, deep study sessions, or a level of spirituality we haven't yet earned. But Islam doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for consistency. Even a few verses a day, read with presence and sincerity, can reshape the way you think, feel, and see the world. When you connect to the Quran daily, you're not just reading a book, you're allowing a divine voice to interrupt the noise of your life. And that voice has a unique power. It cleans the mental clutter that builds up without us noticing. It softens emotional tension. It reframes our problems by placing them within a higher perspective. Because the Quran doesn't simply give information, it gives orientation. It realigns the heart toward what matters and reminds the mind of truths it tends to forget. Think about how much content we consume in a single day. Social media, conversations, news, opinions, hundreds of inputs shaping our internal world. And yet, if none of that is balanced with revelation, our thoughts naturally become reactive, anxious, scattered. The Quran cuts through that chaos. Even 5 minutes of recitation or reflection creates a psychological reset. It's like stepping out of a crowded room into fresh air. There's also something deeply philosophical happening when you read the Quran consistently. You begin to witness patterns. You see how Allah addresses human nature, our hopes, our fears, our tendencies to forget, to worry, to drift. You see yourself in the stories, not as an observer, but as a participant. The Quran becomes a mirror, revealing not only who you are, but who you could become if you allowed divine guidance to shape your inner world. And for many people, the challenge isn't reading, it's connecting. That connection begins with intention. Tell yourself before you open the mushaf, this is for my heart, this is for my healing. Don't worry about how much you cover, worry about whether your heart was present, even for a few seconds. Over time, those seconds accumulate. They deepen. They transform. It also helps to pair recitation with reflection. Pause after a verse and ask, what is Allah teaching me here? How does this apply to my life right now? When you do that, the Quran stops being a distant text and becomes a conversation, one that speaks directly to your struggles, your questions, your uncertainties. In moments of difficulty, you'll find that the verses you've been reciting quietly enter your thoughts. They comfort you, they guide you, they anchor you, and that isn't accidental. A heart that feeds on revelation naturally becomes more stable, more hopeful, more awake. If you want clarity, if you want psychological resilience, if you want spiritual grounding, start with small daily doses of Quran. Don't underestimate them. They carry more power than you realize. Because the Quran doesn't change your life in a single moment. It changes your life through the moments you give it. There is something incredibly profound about the way the human mind works. It is always speaking. Even when we're silent, even when we're alone, the mind is constantly producing thoughts, reactions, judgments, and most of the time, these thoughts run without our awareness. Dailydhikr comes in as a gentle but powerful interruption, an intentional replacement of the noise within with remembrance of the one who created you, sustains you, and ultimately guides you. Dailydhikr isn't simply the repetition of divine words. It's a psychological reconditioning. Every time you say Subhanallah, you're challenging the ego's illusion of control. When you say Alhamdulillah, you're retraining your mind to focus on blessings rather than anxieties. When you say Allahu Akbar, you're freeing your heart from the heaviness of problems by placing them in a divine perspective. And when you say La ilaha illa Allah, you're resetting your priorities, reminding yourself that nothing, not fear, not stress, not people, deserves your ultimate attention except Allah. This is why the Prophet emphasized constant remembrance. It is not because Allah needs it. It's because we need it. Our hearts are constantly being pulled in different directions by worldly demands, expectations, and fears. Dailydhikr grounds us. It brings the heart back home. It restores internal balance, and the truth is, most people underestimate the power of these short phrases. They seem too simple, too quick, too easy, but that's exactly the point. Allah gave us spiritual tools that integrate seamlessly into daily life. You don't need isolation or extensive preparation. You can make Dailydhikr while walking, driving, waiting, cooking, working any moment when your mind begins to wander. You can gently steer it back. What makes Dailydhikr transformative is not the volume or the length. It's the consistency and the presence of the heart. Even if you whisper quietly, even if you speak only to yourself, those words begin to reshape your inner world. Over time, you'll notice something subtle. The negative thoughts lose their sharpness. The anxieties lose their grip. The irritations fade more quickly. Why? Because the heart becomes occupied with something higher, something purer, something that calms rather than disturbs. Philosophically, Dailydhikr is an antidote to the ego's restlessness. It reminds you that you are not defined by your worries or your achievements. You are defined by your connection to Allah. And psychologically, it gives the mind a new rhythm, one that brings stability instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion. If you make dailydhikr a habit, even in small amounts, you will carry a quiet strength wherever you go. You will react differently, speak differently, even think differently, because a heart that remembers Allah frequently becomes a heart that is difficult to shake. So fill your days with remembrance, even if it's only a handful of words repeated throughout the day. Because the more you remember Allah, the more you discover who you truly are. Gratitude in Islam is far more than a polite expression or a momentary feeling. It is a spiritual lens through which you interpret your entire life. When a person adopts shukr as a daily habit, their entire psychological landscape begins to shift. You start noticing what you have instead of obsessing over what you lack. You begin recognizing the subtle mercies in your life that you previously walked past without a second thought. And in that shift, your heart becomes calmer, more hopeful, more resilient. Shukr is one of the most intellectually and spiritually grounding practices because it forces you to confront a simple truth. Blessings don't cease to exist simply because you've stopped noticing them. Most people carry incredible gifts, health, senses, relationships, moments of safety, opportunities, small joys, but they walk through life with their eyes fixed on their problems. Gratitude reopens those eyes. It recalibrates the heart. Psychologically, gratitude reduces stress because it interrupts the human tendency to catastrophize. You cannot be deeply grateful and deeply anxious at the same time. The two states compete for space within the heart. And spiritually, gratitude expands your blessings. Allah promises that when you are grateful, He will increase you, not only in material blessings, but in inner strength, clarity, and barakah. But shukr requires intentionality. You have to pause long enough to see the good. You have to train your mind to acknowledge that even in hardship there are moments of ease woven in, and that awareness doesn't happen automatically. It begins with small practices, a quiet reflection after prayer, a mental list of what went right today, a simple alhamdulillah, even when things aren't perfect. Some people worry that expressing gratitude will make them complacent, as though appreciating the present moment means letting go of ambition. But gratitude in Islam is the opposite of complacency. It fuels ambition because it begins with acknowledging what Allah has already given you. When you recognize blessings, you use them better. You become more energized, not less. You stop chasing validation and instead work from a place of contentment. Shukr also has a profound philosophical dimension. It humbles you. It reminds you that everything you enjoy is from Allah, not because of your brilliance, your effort, or your planning alone, but because He willed ease for you. Gratitude softens arrogance and uproots entitlement, two qualities that suffocate spiritual growth. A grateful heart becomes a receptive heart, open to guidance, open to reflection, open to transformation. And another subtle point, gratitude is not only about the big things, it's about the ordinary. The breath you just took, the ability to hear, to speak, to move, the fact that you woke up today. When you begin to appreciate the ordinary, life becomes extraordinary. You stop rushing through your days and start absorbing them. So, cultivate shukr deliberately. Let it color the way you see your life, your challenges, your blessings, your relationships. Because a heart anchored in gratitude is a heart that walks lightly, thinks clearly, and lives with purpose. One of the most underestimated influences on our spiritual and mental state is the environment we place ourselves in and the people we allow into our inner circle. Humans are naturally impressionable. We absorb attitudes, energies, and habits without even realizing it. The company you keep can slowly elevate your character or quietly drain your spirituality. It can sharpen your mind or clutter it with noise. This is why, in Islam, companionship is not a casual matter. It is a spiritual responsibility. When you spend time with people who remind you of Allah not necessarily through constant lectures, but through their character, their calmness, their sincerity, you feel your own heart becoming lighter. Their presence nudges you toward being a better version of yourself. And sometimes, it's not even what they say, it's what they represent. A person who values kindness makes you more gentle. Someone who prioritizes prayer makes you more consistent. Someone who seeks knowledge inspires you to grow. On the other hand, the wrong environment can suffocate your spiritual progress without you recognizing the cause. A circle that normalizes gossip, negativity, or constant distraction shapes your inner world to match it. The mind becomes restless, the heart becomes heavy, and you find yourself drifting away from the person you intended to be. That drift rarely feels dramatic. It's subtle, gradual, almost unnoticeable until you look back and realize how far you've moved. In today's world, companionship isn't limited to physical presence. The content you consume, the voices you follow online, the atmosphere you entertain in your home, these are all forms of company. If your digital environment is filled with comparison, criticism, and endless stimulation, your internal environment will mirror it. But if you consciously fill it with inspiration, wisdom, Quranic reminders, and voices that elevate rather than drain you, your heart will begin to feel the difference. Purifying your environment isn't about cutting people off harshly or isolating yourself. It's about being intentional. It's about placing your spiritual well-being above social pressure. It's understanding that your heart is too valuable to let just anything enter it. Sometimes, all it takes is spending more time with those who uplift you and less with those who pull you down. Sometimes it's adjusting what appears on your screen. Sometimes it's stepping into spaces, like study circles or community gatherings, where faith is nurtured and minds are enriched. Philosophically, this practice reflects a deep truth. The soul grows where it is planted. If you plant yourself in environments that nourish reflection, sincerity, and goodness, your character will naturally flourish. And if you plant yourself in environments dominated by noise, conflict, or heedlessness, your heart will struggle to find peace. So take control of your environment. Curate your circle. Guard your inner space the way you would guard something precious. Because when you surround yourself with goodness, you don't just change your surroundings, you change your direction. There is a unique clarity that comes at the end of the day, a kind of quiet honesty that you don't always access in the rush of morning or the noise of midday. As the world slows down, your thoughts settle, and your heart becomes more reflective. This is why Islam encourages us to end our day with muhasabah, self-accountability. It's not meant to be a harsh judgment of yourself. It's meant to be a gentle, truthful conversation with your soul. A moment where you step back from the narrative you live today and ask, did I live in a way that brought me closer to Allah, or did I drift? This practice is spiritually cleansing because it resets your direction before it becomes distorted. You catch the small mistakes before they grow into habits. You acknowledge the good you did so you can build on it tomorrow, and you face the weaknesses you displayed, not with shame, but with the intention to improve. A person who holds themselves accountable each night becomes someone who grows with purpose, not accident. From a psychological perspective, nightly reflection grounds the mind. It helps you process the emotional residue of the day instead of carrying it subconsciously into the next. You resolve what needs resolution. You release what needs letting go. This reduces anxiety, improves emotional intelligence, and strengthens mental resilience. It's the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. But muhasabah alone is not enough. Islam pairs reflection with da, because self-awareness without divine reliance becomes a burden. Da transforms your reflections into hope. It shifts your attention from your limitations to Allah's limitless mercy. When you raise your hands at night, you're not just asking for help, you're admitting that you cannot navigate this life alone. That humility is what softens the heart and invites divine assistance. There's something profound about making dur right before sleeping. It's a recognition that the day has ended, your control has ended, and now you entrust your affairs to the one who never sleeps. You ask forgiveness for your shortcomings, strength for your struggles, and clarity for the path ahead. You hand your heart over to the one who can heal it, and even if nothing in your external situation changes overnight, your inner state begins to shift. You sleep lighter, you wake stronger. Philosophically, this nightly routine teaches responsibility without perfectionism, discipline without rigidity, humility without despair. You learn to view life as a continuous journey of refinement, one day at a time. You stop expecting yourself to be flawless and start expecting yourself to be sincere, consistent, and willing to grow. And the beauty is that this habit doesn't require long hours or complicated rituals. Even 5 minutes of honest self-assessment and sincere da before bed can reshape your entire spiritual trajectory. The key is consistency, showing up every night, even briefly, to realign your heart. Because the person who ends their day with reflection and da doesn't just close the day, they elevate it.